Happy Tuesday. Sorry I'm very late. I am a little bit of a mermaid. One of the best things that I learned this year or last year, as I was reading a book on Marilyn Monroe, and she was constantly tardy to things once she became famous. And the reason is that she was always put last. She was in and out of orphanages. Her mom went crazy. Her dad was never around. And obviously, there was a big struggle there for her. But when she became famous, one of the things that I don't know if it's really fame, but anyways, when she had money to really provide for herself, she would take really long baths. Not that I did that, but she would take really long baths. And so she knew she had to be at some sort of engagement, and she, and she would just take a really long time and show up late. Not that I like to do that. I like to be on time and tardy and respect the integrity of people's time if they're wanting to show up on time here. All right, well, a little bit about me. I am on episode 7. I do have a hard cutoff today at noon, so it's only going to be an hour. If for some reason I find that we don't have enough time, which is likely going to be the case, I might do a part 2 next week just to finish up with some of the things that we're going to be discussing today. So as you can see, the episode today is Villainy. And villains are a special archetype, and I have some notes here, so let me just pop them up. Villains hold a very special place in our cultures all across the globe. And so any time that you see it in story, especially, that is that antagonist in the story that kind of makes it. And it's one of the reasons why we go and watch a lot of entertainment. And so villainy is important. I'm doing well, thank you. I was just mentioning about, I don't like being late, so I tried to give enough notice, but yeah. So let me grab my notes here. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day, by the way. We have a full moon going, and that's always a fun time. Hi, hello everyone. Okay, so last week I did a podcast on shadow worth, and shadow worth is a topic that Carl Jung, it's a Jungian ideal that we're working with. Hello, thank you for joining. That we're working with. So when we're looking at the shadow and where we kind of fall in line with that shadow, I'm going to talk about a little bit of what that villain archetype is. So some of the archetypes that we think of immediately, and you guys can pop some in the chat if you can think of some. Oh my gosh, I have so many notes here. I got a little wild and crazy about it, you guys. So there's my shadow notes. I use my iPad for notes, so. All right, so the villain archetype is a symbol in our cultures that shows us the shadow side of ourselves. And this comes up even in everybody's day-to-day. You'll see some parts of your own shadow that complicate things. It makes things a little hairier. So I like to think about it as we have relationships that we connect with people, and sometimes you can get these negative feelings or these low feelings that don't resonate with you. You're getting punished by your girlfriend. Oh no, that's not good. So when we're looking at these, I don't want to call it enemies, but these lower vibration relationships, they cause things like leaks. They cause things where you can't see clearly. So you lack that clarity, you lack the awareness, and it really is this rebellious situation that the villain really truly is. So they represent this dark side of our human nature, which is in this realm is normal for us to experience. And being in that darker nature has it has a purpose. So I think last week I used the example of if you have a relationship, like let's say that you're a woman and you want to be in a relationship with a man, and you're just kind of throwing yourself at him and devoting all this energy and attention towards him, but he's like, no, I don't want any of that. Really, that is a dark side of that relationship. So if the woman wasn't anxious and she wasn't trying to pull and hold on to that man, and she was in a more higher frequency and more in her femininity, then he would look at her a lot differently. Can you see my message? I'm gonna send you right now. I can see a mess. I can see your chats, but I don't. I can't see the message. So the dark aspects are things that society deems unacceptable, dangerous, destructive, and Carl Jung has really strong information on it. So if you want to go review his work, you can definitely do that. And if you want to go back to last week's podcast, that was definitely really helpful in seeing what that projection is. So this is an external projection that typically society deems like unacceptable. They're like, we don't really want to be around that. We don't want that destruction, although it does hold some lessons in it. So the characteristics of the villain, I'm just going to talk about three of them. One of them is rebellion. So we'll talk a little bit about some bigger culture stories of some villains, but they often defy societal norms and moral codes. And so these people, it might be even you, where you're like in active rebellion and you know it, and you're going against the order. I mean, we think of Star Wars, so we're going against the order, challenging authority, and many of us have been through that. I feel it's almost a norm for children to continuously challenge authority and see where they stand with that perceived authority figure. So they'll start challenging that. You know, you're not my whatever. I don't have to listen to you. And then they also, the rebellion also is a reflection of repressed desires, and it's the desire for freedom, power, and control. Like maybe somewhere there's a scarcity within themselves where they're lacking that, and they want to, they're repressing that desire. And so in that repression, it kind of leaks out into these rebellious states. They're driven by wounds. Watching from Bangladesh, your smile is very beautiful. If Russia goes the way of the battlefield of Ukraine and laughs a little, the war will stop already. Yeah, there's definitely a ton of rebellion in War is, I mean, it is definitely a power and control aspect of our society right now. So that is something that we definitely look at as far as where do we sit in this society, what powers are at play, what is the control. I mean, there's some really big theories going on right now of, Antarctica and Greenland and Canada and just some really big 1111 on the Pacific coast. Make a wish. So war is definitely like that power control and their desire for freedom. So there's like revolution, and sometimes it's successful and sometimes it isn't. So, hi, Iron. That is Iron Man. Okay. They're driven by wounds. So, what are wounds? Wounds are normally like relationships that we have with people that are typically close to us. So mothers, fathers are huge ones. God wound is a huge one. Sister wound is a huge. Sister and brother wounds could be huge ones for you if you have brothers and sisters that did anything to harm you when you're in a place of vulnerability. So that vulnerability that somehow got breached in you, and maybe you were at an age or maybe at a mentality that you couldn't process through that, and so it caused a little bit of struggle in there. Did your messages get blocked? I don't think so. So there's some unresolved trauma, and we talked about that last week. So if you want a little bit more information on that, there's definitely go there. Betrayal is a huge one. I know somebody who feels so betrayed, and their wounding is preventing them from like leveling up and escalating things, and they don't want to hear any of the message that I'm trying to like reframing it and rewriting that story, which is what we talked about last week. But reframing it, rewriting that story to hold it in a different light of you're not the victim, you're what did you have control in the situation that caused this situation. A lot of times the villain archetype or the villain wound is going to prevent you from even being able to see it. And so others can probably see it in you, but you're unable to hold it in yourself. So we talked about betrayal, and then a deep sense of injustice. It's just a huge wound that we hold when we're kind of living in that villain archetype. So some have exaggerated traits. So the exaggerated traits can be greed, manipulation, envy, cruelty. We think about narcissists when we hear those terms. That definitely is a narcissistic point of view of when will I get mine? I'm going to get mine no matter what. And so the villain archetype has these kind of on a grander scale. They're lavish. They don't care about anybody. If they see somebody that's climbing up and is doing well, they don't want to see them succeed. They want to see them fail and them succeed. So envy and then cruelty, just not even having any thought for how their actions affect others, which can be very cruel. I see your messages, but I don't have access to I don't know how to look at it. I'm kind of I'm kind of new at using YouTube with my phone, but so these exaggerated traits are amplified versions of qualities we possess to some degree. So every one of us possesses these qualities, these traits, greed, envy, manipulation, and cruelty. We possess those traits, but at what end do we use those against another? One of the other things is it's a mirror to the hero. So in the stories, you have a protagonist and then you have the antagonist. And your messages on YouTube are blocked for me not to see. Oh, um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know where you're messaging me, if it's on the chat or if it's privately, but I'll check after I'm done here. So the mirror to the hero. So we have this, we have the hero, and then you have the villain, or you have the protagonist and the antagonist in stories, and we are drawn to those stories. We are drawn to the drama. We want to see the hero's journey, and we want to see them succeed. And so it could be really moving and emotional for us when the villain is succeeding over the hero, and it just kind of causes us to have hope that good will win. So a lot of the times they're a reflection. So the reflection of, as far as a mirror, the reflection of others in us. So if somebody is good and they have all that, and then we have this envy and we're like, why don't I have that? I want that. You're mirroring. So it's like this positive and then negative. And then I, the best way that I can describe this and the best way that I've quantified it is there's there's a diagram of a horseshoe. So you have a horseshoe, and this one is really easy because it's nice to everybody knows it. So on one side you have the empath, and then on the other side you have the narcissist, and then at the end of it they're kind of touching. They're really close. They're not touching, but they're really close because you're in a horseshoe position. And so the narcissist can be quantified as sort of a villain, which is done largely in, I mean, it's huge in our society right now. There's big groups of people that are like, my ex is a narcissist or my boss is a narcissist and they're a narcissist. And there's no thought into them. It's just externally blaming somebody else to kind of cover themselves of their own lack of responsibility of being like really empathetic. And so, not that empathy is being an empath is the hero, but there is something towards like wanting to be of service. And so, in my opinion, when you have these two here, you want to be more at the end here so that they are more in harmony with each other. So the hero can learn from the hero can learn from the villain, and the villain can learn from the hero. Like they're very close in that horseshoe diagram. Like they're very close, and there's so many different ideals that you can put into this horseshoe diagram, which is why I really like it, because it does help to quantify that. And then in that mirroring, they highlight the hero's vulnerability. So the hero is still vulnerable, which is why they can learn from the villain. And then the villain is also vulnerable, which they can learn from the hero. So there's different traits that if they took the best from each other, they would be in harmony with each other. And then shadow projection is another piece, and we kind of talked a little bit about that. But society often projects its collective fears, insecurities, or forbidden desires onto the villain archetype. And that's why I say, like, we have these huge groups that, for example, it's just an example, that take this narcissist, my ex is a narcissist, or that person is a narcissist, whatever, and they're like, they blame them. And at the end of the day, those people that are blaming are taking that and they're externally pointing it outwardly when they possibly should be looking inwardly. Why does this person trigger me when I perceive them as a narcissist? Why do I feel this way or that way about this person? So if you're feeling envy or you're feeling this desire to be cruel and you're not looking inward of why am I having this emotion and really moving through that internally of why is this happening? Maybe there was a situation as a child that left you feeling vulnerable or betrayed or whatever that is causing that to pop up. But the projection is there. Anytime that you're blaming something outside of yourself, the projection is there. I am a firm believer that we are all made in the image of God, our creator. However you want to say that, like we have been made in the image of the creator. And so we have the strong ability to create our own world. We're creating our own realities. And so the things that are coming to us are serving us for a greater good. So if you're an empath, which I am, and you're finding yourself being manipulated or taken advantage of or whatever, I challenge you to look within yourself of why do I feel this way? Now, if somebody is able to, that is making you upset, they're able to say their truth and say, hey, I want this way, I want this that way. Then and then you're upset by that because you don't have the voice to speak what you would like, then that's on you. Like that is work that you need to do on your own. And so with that understanding, we take those projections and we turn them inwardly and work through them so that we can give it back up, and the next time that those things happen, we can hold it with more emotional regulation. Oh, I already know that I have this wounding that I'm working through, and this situation is triggering this sort of emotional response in me, or this thought in my head, and now I can move through that instead of sitting and, like with villains, I think we think about broody people or kind of looming in this negativity. I I have appointments. I haven't gotten my website set up, but I do have appointments that you can arrange with me. Okay. Unfortunately, the person that was going to help me, it was in a hurricane zone, and so they've been in and out of power, and I wasn't going to push any of that on them. Okay. So the psychological piece of this villain archetype is that there is a huge internal conflict in them. And yeah, I think if you look on my page, there are some links to some other ways to contact me, but you're always welcome to send a message by YouTube, or I think I have my Facebook and Instagram online. So there's a inner conflict with the villain. And when I say villain, like I can have villain archetypal modalities running through me at any moment. And any of us can. And it really is like, how do we work through that? So understanding the inner conflict, there's parts of ourselves that we would like to reject or deny or like that. I remember earlier, sometime last year, I was at work and I just had this overwhelming feeling of envy roll through me. And I'm like, what is this? And it really took me by surprise because I don't necessarily find myself operating in envy. I operate in gratitude. So this feeling was a couple of things. It was a bit of a shock. And then two, it was really powerful. And when I felt it, I was like, where is this coming from? So this is where awareness comes in, and this is where the villain falls short, is they don't have that awareness piece. They just kind of point it outward. Oh, that person is having something better than I am. I want that and I don't have it, so I'm going to feel envious. And I could have easily like denied that feeling and just kind of pushed it back down. But as an energetics and emotional intelligence expert, I know that I need to pull that up, work through it, figure out where it's coming from, address it, clean it up so that my energy is clean, and then let it go. So it took me a few weeks to figure out like where that came from. I was working on it very diligently of like, where is this coming from? Where is this coming from? And I think I was doing like a hypnotherapy, and then it popped into my head, the situation. And then I was like, oh my gosh, the epiphany came. And the realization that it was a sister wound from when I was like 5 or 6 years old. And so I had the sister wound where I had stepsisters that would get doted on and I wouldn't. I didn't have any of that emotional connection or that love or care that a woman or a young lady or a young child needs from a male role model. And so in that, there was a huge suppression because I hadn't thought about that in so many years. There was this huge suppression of this feeling. And then it came up. It was triggered by this situation at work. And, I got to thinking, and here I am, like sitting through, sifting and rationalizing as clear of discernment as I have, rationalizing where these feelings came from, what was true, what wasn't, what could I rewrite and leave, and what could I learn from and take from. So that is an inner conflict that was sitting in my being since I was young. We have many of these situations. I know I have a lot of them that I have to work through. Some of us less, some of us more. It doesn't even matter if you were like in a broken home or in like a perfect home. Sometimes we just feel differently. And as children, I believe there's a lack of like emotional intelligence for children, and in the family home of like raising your kids up with strong emotional intelligence. And what do I mean by that? Being able to like communicate clearly, to feel your feelings, to be able to describe them. And so there is a huge lack in general in our society where that is missing. And we want to, all right, I see you, and I'm going to just set a boundary that we're just going to be doing our villain discussion and none of that other stuff. Anyhow, so in all of this, I saw the inner conflict. I know that there's things that I learned from it, and now as I move forward, anytime that I experience those situations, I'm going to have a lot more clarity. And any other time. So the more that we move through this, the more that we do this, the more it affects our society, our family first, because then when you're acting in emotional intelligence and you are working on your energetics. And what do I mean by energetics? I mean actually doing the work of looking, like what I just explained, like doing that work is the energetic movement of getting it out of your system. So when you get it out of your system, you become a lot cleaner energetically, and it helps to hold any uncomfortable emotion and move through it quickly. So once you start getting these toolkits together, you can do the example of what I did on a faster basis, because now you know how to move through it. When you're just learning something, it takes a little bit of time. And, for me, it took me a lot of time to work on some God wounds. It took me a lot of time to work on some father wounds. But once I started working through them, now when I face them, it's easier for me to move through the feelings and to get to the destination of being emotionally regulated, to have attained whatever closeness I can to personal mastery. So the other thing that the villain archetype is in need of is they have a interesting relationship with power and responsibility. They typically are misusing their power. So they have certain gifting and strengths, and they're using that for ill gains. They do This villain archetype does teach us how how to be balanced. So there's a lot of things. I'm totally about balance. The purpose that I'm here is to show you harmony and balance. And when they misuse power, it really gives you an idea of, okay, you have a power. Let's say you have an authority, you're a parent, and you're a narcissistic parent. You have a responsibility and authority over your wife and your children. But if you misuse that, it's going to cause some harm in the children. And maybe it's not like directly at them, it's indirectly, but the children can feel that energy from the father. So any destructive behavior, even if you're doing it in secret, is going to be felt by the wife, by any of the family unit that's close to them. And so those things can cause pain and unnecessary cruelty to even your own family, your own children. The other thing that the villain does show us is a path to wholeness. When I think about like Gollum from Lord of the Rings, he you could see clearly this inner turmoil that he was experiencing by fighting like back and forth with the this greedy wanting power. He really just wanted power. He just wanted that ring. He just wanted to hold the power. And it had, it's not that it gave him any control or power. It's just he held it. He was holding it. And then there was the other side of him that was like, no, you want to be good. And so he was definitely in this really deep inner turmoil. If any of you remember that. So they show us the ethical leadership that can be, accountability that can be, and balance that can be. So their being in this really like negative side shows you a little bit more clearly that positive side. And we're all working towards harmony, hopefully. And at least if you're here and you're interested in it, that's what your goal and desire is to find harmony. So, with all of these examples and some of the examples that we're going to go over, I have some other examples, is we're looking at the how how this unacknowledged pain can lead to destruction in our lives. One of the things that I read a lot, and I'm always interested in seeing, like, where are people at? Where are they in their life? And how can I gather that information, kind of sit in it, and then figure out like what's going on in the society or in the group or whatever the situation is. It's part of my gifting here. One of the things that I notice with women in particular is that they sit in this empathetic but blamey situation. Like, they have a villain, they're the victim. And this doesn't mean that it's not for men either. But the women in the groups that I see, they are, they're uninspiring, and they know it, and they're complaining about it. Like, how do I get out of this? How do I get out of being dull and boring, and my husband doesn't excite me, and blah 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 blah. Like, you can name a whole list of things. I think we kind of know what we're talking about here. They're blaming, they're not even looking inwardly. So this work is so important because it helps you look inwardly. They're not even looking out. They're looking out to try and figure out what's going to resolve this inner purposelessness and kind of boredom within themselves. And so in that, when they're in that like lifestyle that they've chosen for themselves, and they have like uninspired men that they've clung to, this is a destructive behavior. They're not addressing these inner wounds, and they don't have the awareness of how to address the inner wounds to fully heal and be complete. So they are in this, even though it doesn't look too bad, they're in this destructive relationship. And I see it so often that these women are in these destructive relationships. I was one of them, so I speak from a place of experience and knowledge. Like, I've been in one, and I had to consciously separate from that. And then in that, I was like, look, I know I have this energy, and I'm kind of bringing in this energy from whatever thing. I am going to work on myself and get myself well. I think a lot of us say that they're going to do that, but then don't do the work. And women, we need to do the work. We need to be inspiring the men. We need to be inspiring them to create and protect and provide for us. Not in a negative way, not in a manipulative way, but in a way that's natural, like the natural cycle of nature. So so that is a huge destructive behavior that women are kind of set in, and with some awareness can get out of. So there are things that you can do to get yourself from that situation and into something that is more beneficial. The villain archetype, the psychological significance, and we'll move on to some examples. And I have about 20 minutes left. It's a path to wholeness. So confronting the villain within ourselves, our shadow side, which is what I did my talk on last week, is essential for personal growth and integration. So here I'm talking about recognizing the areas where we're lacking in emotional intelligence, addressing them. How can you acknowledge it? How can we see it? Do we have that desire for personal growth? And what do I mean by personal growth? It's like you're working on the way that you react to things. You're working on your real-time reaction to things, and coming from a place of, okay, this is happening. Here's my tools that I'm going to use to get through this situation. So when you experience an emotion, it should be about 90 seconds. 90 seconds for you to feel it, honor it, let it go. And that's an average time. But if you're not, and you're pushing it down and not dealing with it, it's just going to kind of topple, and then you're going to have this huge mound of things that you're going to have to work on, which is where I find myself. And I've been doing this for, a good number of years. But personal growth is like the thing that I am the most passionate about at this time. And the integration piece, like I said, is having the tools it takes to move through these feelings, to move through these wounds, to move through the trauma. And last week I was talking about how important it is for us to do that, but also do it be in a gentle way that we're able to hold and carry ourselves without hurting ourselves. Because you can, if you're trying to heal, sometimes you can hurt yourself. So definitely want to be with that. And then, so that integration is important. I am running a group course for women. If you are interested, it's a 12-week course. Go ahead and you can put a comment in the chat, or you can directly message me, and I will set up a time with you, and we can discuss what that looks like. It's really integrative. It's a lot of the key things that I've used along my path to come to where I am in my emotional regulation and awareness, and really taking the things that I am really high in emotional intelligence and gifting that to you. So when you're in my energy, you're going to learn from that. Just like the villain is going to learn from the hero if they are open to that. And the hero, the same thing. Maybe there's a little bit of compassion on both sides that they can grow from the relationship. It makes me think of the Lego Batman movie, when the Bruce Wayne or Batman character and the Joker, they have this really cute relationship. So that one is a really good kind of a cute one to observe and understand. But he's like, "Oh, I don't do ships. We're not in a relationship. I don't do ships." And Joker is just like really sad about it. He's like, "But we're so good together. You complete me." Like, that is the villain and the hero. There is this wholeness in it that is kind of adorable. So when we're looking at that path to wholeness, if they were learning from each other, they can find harmony in their relationship with each other by learning from the characteristics that each of them hold that are positive, and working together to have this like really wholesome situation. So when I came to terms with the fact that I was feeling envy, I had to come to terms with, yeah, I feel envy. It's not something that I am void of. There is definitely other emotions that I will feel that maybe don't resonate with me in the moment, but I carry them anyways. We all carry every single emotion in us. There's none of us that are like, oh yeah, I'm above whatever the emotion is. I'm above irritation. Nobody ever irritates me because I'm in control of my emotions enough. Okay, you can still become susceptible. I don't care how well you are. You could still feel it. So you're still susceptible to that. But when we start accepting these things, then the sabotage. So in that envy, I was kind of saying like, oh, I'm a little bit bitter too of the situation, and I'm I'm unconsciously reacting to this feeling and kind of have a chip on my shoulder, and I had to become really honest with where that feeling was taking me. So, as I said, once you start to see these self-sabotaging experiences and the patterns that it puts you into, you can finally break free from those feelings and or the patterns. So the women that go from relationship to relationship and their boyfriend is basically the same thing in a different body every single time. I I funnily, and I don't know if funnily is a word, but okay. I found that my relationship that I left, and I've been single since then, was basically reincarnated in my work. The the things that I was avoiding dealing with were like the things were coming up at work, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just can't escape this. Like, I cannot escape this. I definitely need to deal with it. So when we're looking at like how much work we're doing, I mean, I do a lot of work. I've spent hundreds of hours researching, doing energetic work, hypnotherapy, and journaling, like all kinds of things. And yeah, I've had a lot of things going on in my life, but as I'm like looking at that, I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's going to continue following me until I address it. So, yeah. All right. Mr. Krabs, please relax. All right, I have about 12 minutes. I have to be on a plane in a couple hours. So, but I did want to talk about some of the examples of the villain archetype. And if I am unable to get through the rest of this, I am likely going to have like a part two next week, and we can just continue and have a little bit longer form conversation about it because I feel it is a really interesting topic and it kind of goes with the shadow work that I've been doing. So, some examples in classic literature and mythology obviously is Satan, definitely is representing some big rebellion and pride and a fall from that higher grace that maybe we're wanting to, well, not maybe, but hopefully we want to have like grace and, just be in humbleness and be in a higher rapturous state. And I feel that being in a raptured state is a higher frequency than being in like a prideful state where you're like, no, it's mine. I want it to be mine. And then Loki is obviously another one, is a trickster, challenging order, revealing truths, which is kind of an interesting thing, revealing hidden truths. So there's a saying where if I don't know, I guess the best way I can describe this is I've had conversations with people and I'm talking to them in a certain field or context, and it's almost like they're in a different dimension than I am, and I'm having a hard time understanding why they can't hear what I'm saying. Like, even when they repeat it back, they're unable to repeat what I'm saying. Like they have a veil over their eyes and they can't see they can't see from my vantage point. And I'm sure people do that with me. They're like, I can see even more than you. Okay. Tell me all about it. I want to hear all about it. But it's interesting that revealing a hidden truth is one of those things that the villain will do, which is good and bad because sometimes when people hear truth, they get very upset. I mean, you can't handle the truth was like a huge quote for a reason. There was a huge reason why that was a big quote is you can't handle the truth. You can't handle it. If you heard the truth, you would fall apart. Your foundation would be shaken and broken and torn apart. And when that happens, I can tell you because I've been through it, it's very, very unsettling. And that's probably a mild way of putting it. It's very unsettling to have your foundation shooken. So when we're building ourselves, we're building it on a solid foundation and we're wanting to contain that, contain that truth, hold it. And then any place that we're seeing things that are dishonest or not in alignment with us, we're addressing it and moving forward through it. So some other examples are the Joker and Batman, and I was talking about how cute the Lego movie like had this really cute way of having these two characters really in it was really adorable the way that they did it. And children's literature, children's stories are great ways to like have these are great ways to have these symbols that show us a part of ourselves. So that was it symbolizes chaos and consequence of neglecting the societal outcasts. So in Batman not taking Joker seriously, he was like ready to burn it all down. And even in Christopher Nolan's Batman series, the Heath Ledger Joker was a really powerful way of showing that this villain is revealing something. They're revealing hidden truths that maybe Batman doesn't see, maybe the city authorities didn't see. They weren't taking him seriously, and now there is mayhem that is going to be had because they want to be seen and they want to show that they're being neglected in some way. But in their neglect, that fear of neglect or fear of abandonment or whatever the fear is, whatever that wounding was, is the responsibility for, let's say, the Joker to really look at that and address that from within. Darth Vader is another one. We was talking about Star Wars earlier. Darth Vader is an embodiment of that light and dark struggle. And that one was a very interesting one as well. So, we're looking at these struggles. He was light, then he was dark, and there were moments where the humanity within him, because he was like losing that humanity, the humanity in him was kind of getting a little, when it was getting questions, like he was getting a little shook in his foundation. So, and then finally, like the villain archetype happens in our everyday life. And I use the example of empaths and narcissists, but anytime that we're sitting and blaming one side or the other, I think politics is one that's a huge, like, they're creating this villain and this hero, and they're like doing the stories wag the dog style. So it's a really interesting way of looking at those villain and hero characteristics working like in tandem with each other. And I'm not going to get into any politics, but it's just that is one that is huge. And then in reality TV, we see it a lot as well. In entertainment, we see it a lot as well. Just following the lives of these people that are, celebrities, or maybe they have some interesting things going on in their lives. Like, I don't think that the Kardashians weren't popular for a reason. People were really drawn to it, women especially, because they're seeing this like drama play out in the lives, but there's like a villain. Oh my gosh, I can't believe blah blah blah. I don't know. I've never really watched Kardashians. I'm so sorry. But they're like, creating these villains, and then and then all the stuff you can think about, like divorces that got big. I'm thinking of like Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. That was a huge thing last year. That was really interesting. And so they're like, both sides are just trying to build this like villain and this hero. And, did it really help anybody win? I don't know. All right, so that leaves me with 4 minutes, and I still have a lot of information to work through. So I'll just I'll tie this together this time, and then we'll work on some of the villain shadow work that they can do on the next stream. So the villain archetype is not just evil. It's there to teach us and to help us confront and integrate these darker things that we feel inside ourselves. So any impulse that you have to get one over on somebody else, anytime that you're having a conflict, and in that conflict you're like, I'm going to burn them down, I'm going to show them, I am going to whatever, in a sense of pride and like self-protection, where it's actually not really protection, it's sabotaging somebody else. It helps you to understand getting to these root behaviors of the destructive behaviors. And the other thing is like, it's teaching us, the villain is teaching us how to grow into a more whole and balanced individual. So we're taking these negative aspects that we're seeing mirrored in ourselves, we're taking those and we're alchemizing them into something good. We want everything to be for our greater good. Everything that is in our life is for our greater good. So we need to sit in that truth, hold it, and then we can move out beyond that. Whew. All right, 2 minutes. I am going to sign off unless somebody has any questions. I see that there is, all right, some attention. Thank you, Mr. Krabs. So next week I am going to we'll finish up with the villain archetype and shadow work. And how we can look within ourselves. We'll just go a little bit deeper into how we can look into ourselves and recognize these traits and desires that we're having that may not be for our best, that we need to alchemize into something else. I hope you got a lot out of this. I am going to be on vacation, but I will be fielding any questions, so please feel free to reach out to me. I am on TikTok at the Soulestic Podcast. I am on Instagram at Soulestic Intelligence. I am on Facebook at Soulestic Intelligence, and then also here on YouTube at Soulestic Intelligence. I run this podcast weekly, and I would love for you guys to continue joining me. If there's any comments that you have, please put them in the bottom so that I can see them. And I will see you guys later. Cheers. See if I know how to get out of here.